Hi, everyone, and welcome to Figuring It Out, the podcast about your life might change in your 20s after graduation. I'm Kirsten, and I am so excited to dive into this crazy time with you all, bringing you insights, stories, and conversations with experts that spend time studying this exact stage of life. As someone transitioning into this chapter of my life as well, I know for a fact that I can't do it alone. In a world where we're scrolling through TikTok, it feels like everyone's got it all figured out. I mean, look at influencers like Alex Earle. She picks up her college room, lands a penthouse in Miami with all of her college best friends, and only a year later is attending the famous white party. She also is traveling abroad every weekend, launching her own framed jeans line. Talk about a seamless post-grad life. But let's be real for a second. That's not everyone's reality, or at least it's definitely not mine. We're constantly bombarded by young entrepreneurs who have built their careers on social media, but what about the rest of us? You know, the ones who just graduated, have been through at least 13 interview rounds, and still no job. Well, I am now facing the daunting decision of moving back home with my parents. Yep, it's not all about paparazzi and glam, but that's exactly what we're here to talk about. From shifting your social circles and moving out of college dorms or housing, to figuring out your career path, a salary, and that leap towards your independence, we're going to be diving into it all. How do relationships, both friendships and romantic, evolve in this phase? What does it mean to balance your individualism and communalism when choosing where to live, who to surround yourself with, and how to build your future? Your career might push you towards independence, but does that change depending on your job or the industry that you're in? And how will it all shift again if you decide to start a family one day? As a 22-year-old, these questions I only dreamed about a year ago. Suddenly, they became the questions at the forefront of my life. If you're like me, the only answer I have is, I have zero idea. From what I've learned, Post-Grad isn't a one-size-fits-all, and we're here to break it down. Today, I'm going to specifically talk about the individualism versus communalism, potential living arrangements, navigating friendships, and career growth. So, let's figure it out together. Hi, guys, and welcome back to Figuring It Out. I'm so pumped for today's episode because you're in for an absolute treat. Today, we are going to hear from three of my college friends who are about to navigate the crazy world after graduation. Honestly, everyone is freaking out of it, but that's what makes it fun, right? All right, enough of me talking. Let's get to the good stuff. I want you to meet three amazing people and hear a little bit about their lives. They're all doing different things with their lives post-grad, and trust me, they have got some stories and plans that you do not want to miss out on. So, let's kick this off and have them introduce themselves. You guys know the drill: name, future career path, where you're living, who you're living with, major, literally anything fun you want our listeners to know. Gracie, you want to kick us off?
Hi, I'm Gracie. I'm really excited to talk about my future plans, worries, and what I'm excited about, and get to hear a little bit more about everyone else's plans. In the fall, I will be attending Ohio University to get my master's in educational school counseling. I'm really excited to continue my education and get closer to my goal of becoming a school counselor. After graduation, I'll be moving back in with my parents and making the hour commute to grad school. I'm currently a psych major, so switching to more of the education side of things will definitely be a change for me.
Hi everyone, my name is Isabella and I'm currently in the interview process for marketing and client-facing roles. After graduation, I'll likely be moving back to San Francisco. I love the city and it'll be a nice place to be back on the West Coast after college. I'm looking forward to being closer to family, rekindling with my high school friends who are also living in the Bay Area, and I'm really excited to start my career in post-grad life, so let's see where this journey takes me.
Hey guys, I'm Kaitlyn, and like Isabella and Gracie, I'm pretty excited to see what the future holds. After graduation in May, I'll be living back home with my parents and little brother in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is about 35 minutes south of Nashville. I'm taking a gap year to build my resume for PA school, meaning I need hours and hours more of clinical experience. I'll be a registered behavioral technician full-time to fulfill this for the whole year. I'm excited to get closer towards my career, though.
Thanks, guys. So many fun plans and careers. I'm jealous, honestly. I'm just excited to start planning my trips to get to visit everyone. I can't lie, Isabella, California sounds so nice right now. So I figured we could dive into a couple different topics and you all can give your opinions and experiences in each. Obviously, we aren't all there yet, but we've learned a lot recently about the changes that occur post-grad and how this could affect our own perception of individualism and communalism. We are going to define these in the next segment, but first, I just want to ask what you guys are most nervous about for this change, just to get the ball rolling and our listeners thinking.
Thank you, Kirsten. I'm sure all of us are feeling this, but leaving Oxford is something that is very nerve-wracking. Although I'm excited to start this next phase of my life, I'm very sad about leaving this part of my life behind. I'm most nervous about starting grad school as I'm graduating early. I'm a year younger than the rest of the people headed to grad school, and I have a whole less year of college experience. I struggle a lot with imposter syndrome, and I feel like it is only going to worsen as grad school begins. Something I'm not looking forward to is moving back home. Yes, it'll be nice to not have to pay for rent or groceries, but having to share a bathroom with my younger sister again just seems like a step backwards. I'm excited to get to be back home for my sister's senior year of high school and everything that goes along with that. I will also be living in the same zip code again as my boyfriend for the first time in 3 years, so I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm very nervous about how this next year is going to look compared to the fun life of living in Oxford. Like I mentioned, I'll be commuting an hour to get to school a few times a week, serving on the weekends, subbing during the week, saving money to move out, starting to pay off undergraduate loans, paying for grad school myself, and getting a degree at the same time. This next year is going to look a lot different.
Honestly, one of the things I'm most nervous about post-grad is the shift in social circles. In college, you're constantly surrounded by friends, whether it's roommates, classmates, or just people you run into on a daily basis. Moving back home means adjusting to a different dynamic. Some of my friends will be in different cities, others will be working crazy hours, and it won't be as easy as just walking across campus to see someone. I'm also a little nervous about the job search and starting my career, like many people are. There's a lot of excitement in finding that first full-time role, but also a lot of uncertainty. Am I making the right choice? Am I moving to the right locations? Will I actually enjoy what I'm doing? It feels like a big step into the unknown, so I guess I'm just trying to embrace that and trust that it'll all work out.
This is a pretty big change in my daily life, too, and I'm pretty nervous to live at home again. I've loved my time in Oxford, and when I'm going home in the summer and winter, I'm so eager to get back to school for so many reasons. That may be to feel independent again or to simply see all of my college friends. It's scary to think that instead of this being a couple months away from school, it's permanent. Moving from home to college was such a big change that took me months to adapt to, so I'm a little worried about how long I may need to adjust or if I ever will completely.
I think all of us here and even our listeners can agree that these are pretty common ideas to be nervous about. It's almost like the life that you have spent the last 4 years building is suddenly changing and every single thing is shifting. Whenever I feel my own nerves creep in, I always tell myself that I'm not alone, because in hindsight, everyone around you is experiencing this exact change in their own way. Even though it doesn't look exactly like the person next to you, or yours might look a little bit different than one of your roommates, it is going to be okay. It doesn't always make you feel better, but it's a nice reminder that you're not alone. Sometimes it just takes the edge off. So for everyone listening, take us four as your example. We are definitely all in this together. As I had mentioned before, we are all in a course that's focused strongly on communalism as well as individualism. Through discussion, we uncovered both of these practices that surround us on a daily basis. Now, scientifically speaking, communalism is defined as the allegiance to one's own ethnic group rather than to the wider society. But honestly, in class, we've taken that definition a bit further and explored some new ideas and perspectives about communalism. What are some points and takeaways that you guys think of when you hear the word communalism?
When I hear the word communalism, I think about the idea of a shared identity and support within a group. While the textbook definition focuses on allegiances to one ethnic group, I feel like we've expanded that meaning in class to include more than just ethnicity. It's also about the ways we rely on family, friends, and even social communities for support and belonging. One big takeaway for me is how communalism and individualism constantly interact. We live in a society that encourages independence, but at the same time we see communal values playing a huge role in our lives. Families make decisions based on what's best for the group. Communities come together in times of crisis, and even the digital spaces, people form online communities that offer support and shared purpose. Another interesting perspective we explored in class is how communalism isn't just about obligations to a group. It can also be about emotional and cultural connections. In many cultures, communal values shape traditions, influence life choices, and provide a sense of security. But at the same time, there can be challenges when communal expectations conflict with personal goals. So for me, communalism is really about balancing personal identity with collective responsibility. It's about how we can navigate our connections with others while still trying to maintain our individuality.
When I think of communalism, I immediately think of family. Growing up, there was always a strong sense of we over me, whether that meant helping around the house or celebrating fun traditions together or just making decisions with everyone in mind. Now, moving back home after graduation is a form of communalism. I'll be sharing space again, adjusting to my family's routines and contributing in different ways rather than just focusing on my own individual goals. When thinking about communalism in my college life, I think of my sorority. Being part of a sorority means contributing to a larger group, whether it's through philanthropy, supporting sisters, or working on towards shared goals. For example, in my chapter, we all come together to raise money for our philanthropy, and that collective effort is more important than anyone's personal individual contribution. Looking ahead, I see that the same communal mindset carrying over into the workplace. Just like in a sorority, companies rely on teamwork. Each person has their own strengths, but the success of the organization depends on everyone working together. The same way I learned to lean on my sorority sisters and use our different skills to make things happen, I know I'll have to do the same within my future job. It's all about recognizing that no one succeeds alone and that the best outcomes come from collaboration and a shared purpose.
Thanks, guys. Those are both awesome examples and explanations of communalism. I especially love the whole we over me scenario. I always find it easier to grasp new concepts when I have something familiar to compare them to. And as college students, we definitely experience communalism every day, whether it's with our roommates, group projects, clubs, or all the different organizations that we might be a part of. But let's not forget the flip side of this, individualism. Now, when people hear the word individualism, they sometimes associate it with being negative or bad, but the truth is there's room for both communalism and individualism in our life. The true definition of individualism is the habit or principle of being independent and self-reliant. And let me tell you, as someone in the early 20s, this is something that we have to practice a lot, especially as we figure out our next big steps in the life. We're kind of doing it alone and figuring out what we want for ourselves. So who's got a real life example of individualism that they could help break it down for us?
One of the biggest examples of individualism that stands out to me is taking responsibility for our or my own success post-grad. In college, we have group projects and study together, and we have professors that are guiding us through our semester. However, in post-grad, we have to figure things out for ourselves. This is especially true for me because I'm taking my gap year for PA school. This is the time to make myself stand out as an individual and become competitive against my peers. I'll be working and shadowing constantly in order to make myself the most competitive applicant I can be. At the end of the day, it is all up to me.
Exactly. I think it's also going to look different for all of us. And like Kaitlyn was saying, obviously hers is PA school, mine's also grad school, but then some of us are finding jobs elsewhere. I totally agree that there is always a time and a place for having a more independent outlook on things. That's why it's important to think about individualism as well. I remember when I was picking the college that I wanted to attend, it was, what am I going to study? How far did I want to be away from home? And what would be the best fit for me? Of course, a lot of those decisions were going to impact the people around me, but at the end of the day, I had to think about my future and the long-time benefits. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should always be thinking about yourself. Definitely not. Life is all about balance. Throughout your life, you will have all these different chapters where you will need to have a more individualistic outlook, and there'll be times in life where you definitely need to shift back to a more communal outlook. This is always going to be shifting no matter what. So now that we've been able to break down each concept, let's chat a little bit more about it. Isabella, I feel like your transition will be super interesting since you are about to head into a brand new environment, a little bit different from where you grew up. How would you explain the current outlook on these ideas and these changes as a college student versus the concept you might most compatible with post-graduation?
Yeah, that's such a good point, Kirsten. Thinking about it, my outlook on individualism and communalism has definitely shifted and been shaped throughout college. And I imagine it'll keep evolving after graduation. When I first moved to Ohio for college, I didn't know anyone. It was a completely new environment, and I had to rely on individualism to figure things out. I had to push myself to meet people, get involved, and build a life from scratch. It was all about making independent choices that shaped my experience, from picking my major to deciding which opportunities to go after. Now, post-grad, I feel like I'm shifting back to the more communalism in a way. Moving home to California means reintegrating into my family's daily life, reconnecting with old friends, and adjusting to a new routine that's not just about me. At the same time, I'll be starting my career, which brings back that individualist mindset, focusing my own growth, career decisions, and future goals. So honestly, I think post-grad is going to be a mix of both. There will be times where I'll need to be independent, like navigating my career path, but I also know that having a strong support system, whether that's family, friends, or coworkers, will be just as important. It's all about finding that balance.
I love that, Isabella. I literally could not imagine moving home with all my siblings and my family to the place where I grew up and starting a whole entire new career. You definitely are going to have to try to find a balance between the communalism and the individualism, which at first it might be hard, but I feel like you definitely will get the hang of it.
I definitely could see myself having a more communalism mindset. For me, communalism is all about the idea of a shared support and responsibility within a group, not just about ethnic or cultural ties, but it's about how you rely on each other in different aspects of life, whether it's within a family, a friend group, or community. There's a sense of connection that influences the way we make decisions and support one another. One example of communalism in my everyday life is how my family always comes together and helps each other out, whether it's something as simple as making dinner for one another or something bigger like supporting a family member through a tough time. There's always this unspoken understanding that we are all there for each other. Even in college, I see communalism in the way my friends step in to help, whether it's studying together, checking in on each other's mental health, or just creating a sense of belonging in a new environment. It really reinforces the idea that even though we all have our own individual goals, we still need that communal support to thrive.
Totally. I think especially you were touching on communalism in college, living in a college house, most of us living with so many people, we find that communalism is oftentimes at the forefront of our mind, definitely a little bit more than individualism. So moving home will definitely be interesting for us. Kaitlyn, I know you're moving home as well, but not jumping right into grad school like Gracie is. So how do you think that your outlook or the concept with these two words will change post-grad?
Right. So actually in one of my other psychology classes, I learned about how boomeranging home, which means leaving home and coming back, can have an impact on young adults' mental health. A study published in 2015 by Jennifer Cobb and her colleagues in the Journal of Family Issues revealed that those who boomeranged experienced higher levels of depressive symptoms. This was attributed to employment issues or job loss, breakups, and other unintended life changes such as financial struggles. Those who returned home due to employment problems specifically had significantly higher depressive symptoms. In our culture, there's also stigma that surrounds moving back in with your parents, which leads to social comparison and feelings of failure, like we mentioned in the Blip It with Alex Earle and her frame jeans. So I thought this was good to know prior to moving back so that I can try to prevent it. I'm trying to keep a positive mindset knowing I will lose some of my independence and more family responsibilities will end up falling on me. However, I will be progressing towards a goal. Keeping in contact with my friends at home and from school and spending time with my family I may not have otherwise.
I feel like you have an awesome mindset going into it, trying to figure things out, while also dealing with the bittersweet feeling of leaving college. I think that every time we start a transition into a new chapter of our lives, we have to have a slightly larger outlook as an individual because we have to make choices that will impact us and our futures. Obviously, there are exceptions to this, but I think for the most part, we can all agree we are making choices right now that are going to shape the rest of our lives. Kind of like when I had to decide on where I was going to go to graduate school or if I was going to go straight into the workforce, I had to make a lot of choices for me. I needed to decide if the cost of the degree was going to be worth it, where I wanted to be, and what exactly I wanted to do. Although this might be difficult to think about, I am the only person that can make those choices for myself. So I spent a lot of time in reflection. I personally find it so interesting how these scopes can shift so quickly in our lives and how we must learn to balance them the right way. Can you guys think of any other random times that you've had to shift these ideas, maybe quickly, maybe it happened over a longer period of time. I just want to open it up to you guys.
Definitely during your career at times. Of course, you will always work with your team to create an amazing final project, but at times you must think of yourself and how you can get better and advance to the next level.
On the topic of careers, I think you need to have an individualist outlook if you want to advance in a specific area. For example, if you want to work on self-development, you would have to engage with self-development programs and projects.
Exactly. My mind obviously went to career first because it is so dependent on personal achievement. On top of that, your salary and the money you make depends on that achievement, especially in the society we are in today. I feel like so much depends on your income. So how can you not look at that through the individualistic lens?
Right. I also think romantically, when you choose to be in a relationship, you will have to change from a more individualistic outlook to a more communalist one. I think of it as creating a team and working together for one another.
Exactly. I feel like you guys nailed them all. Obviously, your career and your romantic relationships post-grad are going to be things that are going to affect these outlooks in extreme ways. Of course, we are going to touch on each of these topics a little bit more as the podcast goes on. This shift from communalism to individualism and vice versa can occur in almost every single area of our lives. Since everyone is familiar with the concepts now, let's move into connecting these ideas with the biggest post-grad topics. Okie dokie. Welcome back. That was a nice break. When I think about the biggest area in which communalism and individualism might shift, it's where we land to live once we graduate. There are literally so many different options. I mean, there are 50 states that we can choose from. Many people find themselves moving to a brand new city. They end up away from their friends, and then some of us are headed back to the old childhood zip code. So at first I thought that I found out I was going to be bunking up with my siblings again. I had a little bit of a freak out moment. Some might call it a teenage girl freak out. I just had ultimate freedom for the last 4 years. I could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And now I have to be home by 12 for a curfew. I have to ask to go see my friends, and that is actually crazy to me. After this initial freak out occurred, I had the realization that no matter how I felt about the move, it was going to happen no matter what. My college house would be put into small boxes, and I will be saying hi to my childhood bedroom once again. Actually, the move is going to be happening in 60 days, so it's time for me to figure it out, and quickly. Obviously, moving back home comes with so many different shifts, life changes, and extreme internal feelings and opinions. With Gracie and Kaitlyn moving back home, and Isabella possibly moving away from home, we have lots of things to cover today and so many questions that we need to answer. I'm a psychology major, and a lot of times we focus on mental health. The first place that your mind goes to is the well-being of each person and the changes that are happening in their lives. As my interest in the living transition heightened, I turned to research to uncover some statistics from individuals who have already completed this transition. The most informative study that I could find contained longitudinal research on living alone post-graduation. The introduction of the study kind of explained that there was a spike of people living alone due to COVID-19. Starting in 2020, more people chose to live by themselves than with roommates due to the virus in an attempt to keep themselves safe. Obviously, we all kind of experienced this in different ways. As the statistics have shown, this rate has stayed pretty consistent today, which honestly I was a little bit surprised about. 7 different states and areas were studied, both rural and urban communities. This is important to note because in some places, roommates are essential from a rent standpoint, or especially in college. Like in college, most people are constantly surrounded by large groups of people, whether that is roommates, you're in a class together, or you just have a large group of friends. As I reflect on my own time in college, there were moments where I had to take a call or do an assignment in college where it required silence, and honestly, that was almost never attainable. The constant chaos of college becomes normal for some people. If I were to move from the chaos that I live in every single day to living alone, I know that I would personally struggle with this adjustment for sure. After I dove into a little bit of more research, the National Institute of Health said that living alone is one of the largest pipelines to experiencing depression post-grad. Quantitative data from the studies revealed that those living alone postgraduate are about 42% higher risk to experience depression. And if I'm not going to lie, 42% kind of sounds like a big number. The isolation and the lack of interaction has a drastic effect on one's mental health. Personally, I was not expecting that number to be 42%. That is way higher than I thought. But what do you guys think? Do you think any of you guys have a personal experience with yourself or someone older where you might have experienced this depression, or these people in your life might have experienced this depression?
Yeah, I totally had no idea how hard living alone could be on people. However, I have had a friend who was in college at NYU during COVID. She basically lived alone the first 2 years of college. Not only did she not know anyone going into it because she was so out of state from Tennessee, it was almost impossible to meet people. Like mentioned in that study, she experienced depression as a result. I can imagine how living alone, even by choice, could lead to the same feelings of isolation and loneliness that she felt. Even though there are times with the 11-person household I live in right now, I want to live alone, I can't imagine how much harder it would be to not see people at all where you live. Seeing even one or two people on your way to the kitchen or living room can make anyone's day a little brighter.
I completely agree, Kaitlyn. The idea of living alone after being surrounded by people all the time in college is a big adjustment. For me, I'm a little nervous about moving back home, especially after experiencing the independence of college life. But at the same time, I think it'll be nice to have a support system right there within my family. Still, there's a part of me that worries about falling back into old patterns, where it's easy to feel disconnected or stuck. When I think about the research you shared, Kirsten, it's interesting to consider how those living alone can feel isolated. It makes me appreciate the small interactions we have with the people, like seeing someone in the kitchen or talking to a roommate in passing. But also there's a lot of growth that can happen in living independently, whether that means living alone or finding balance between independence and communal life. I think it's all about finding that middle ground that works for each person.
Totally. I think it's also super important to note for all of our listeners that we all live in houses that have way too many people living in them for the amount of bedrooms. We're so used to walking down the stairs and you pass someone, you walk into the kitchen, you pass someone, and our lives and our homes here are about to be totally uprooted as we are thrown into the craziest. Well, I'm sure for you all that those crazy stats were scary to hear, but maybe it's a good thing that I didn't come across all the statistics. Isabella, what do you think about it? I feel like since you already have had the idea of moving somewhere else in your mind, you have definitely thought about the loneliness part or what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about the loneliest aspect. For example, moving into Miami University my freshman year was definitely a big change, big step, moving across the country, not knowing anybody. But I would definitely say it's been a more positive than negative experience, although it was really hard at first and lonely at times. I would say it's been my most positive experience I've had. Another big shift for me is moving back home in school. Even if I wasn't actively making plans, I was always around people, whether it was roommates, classmates, or just running into friends on campus. Moving back home, I know that dynamic is going to change. And while I'll have family around, it's definitely going to take more effort to stay socially connected. I think what makes it even trickier is that everyone's post-grad experience is so different. Some people are moving to new cities where they don't know anyone. Some are living alone for the first time, and others, like me, are going back to a familiar place, but in a completely different stage of life. No matter the situation, I feel like post-grad can be isolating in its own way because we're all figuring out things at different paces. That being said, I do think the transition is a chance to be more intentional with relationships, whether it's making an effort to see old friends, staying connected with college friends from afar, or even putting myself out there to meet new people in a professional setting. I know I'll have to take more of an active role in maintaining my social life. It's a little intimidating, but like Gracie said, I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth and this new kind of independence.
Isabella, I can totally see where you're coming from. It's so crazy to see how different our experiences post-grad will be and where all of our worries are going to lie. With the four of us even, our experiences are so different. That just kind of goes to show how much everyone's lives differ after college, and it's so hard not to compare. But it's important to keep in mind that as a result of all of this change and independence, there's so much room for growth.
Exactly. As it's terrifying, at least we're all kind of going through it together, so it makes it a little bit better in the back of our minds. But let's just like brainstorm or think of some ways that we could counteract the loneliness in a new town whenever it starts to creep in. Some ways that we could think about the depression creeps in, the loneliness, and we can get ourselves out there and just start something new.
Yeah, moving back home or to a new place can definitely feel isolating at first, but I think there are ways to counteract that. For example, staying in touch with college friends through regular calls or visits will be important, but I also want to push myself to meet more people, whether that's through work, joining a gym or club, or even just saying yes to more social opportunities. Also, small things like working from a coffee shop instead of staying at home all day can help create a sense of connection. It's really all about being intentional with socializing and finding a new routine that keeps me more engaged.
Totally. I feel like those are perfect ideas, especially the thing like the coffee shop. I don't even think that we realize the small ways in which we can get ourselves out there slowly. I once saw a TikTok that explained that we need to pay attention to the people that we see every day. You will start to realize that there is someone else who goes to that coffee shop at 9 a.m., followed by the train at 12. And in hindsight, you're doing the same exact thing. Those are your people. Stick with them. There are going to be people in your life. You just have to take the first step to say hi. Even if it is kind of awkward at first, I promise it's not going to be that big of a deal afterwards. And honestly, they probably are thankful that you said something. I am the kind of person who literally cannot deal with awkward silence ever in my life. Literally never have I sat in silence. Let's take the bathroom, for example. If I am washing my hands next to someone, even if I don't know them, I have to say something because I literally cannot stand there in silence. So as one does, I always revert back to complimenting them in some sort of way. Even if I don't love their shirt, I will tell them that I like their shirt because that is better than me washing my hands next to them in silence in a weird bathroom. Believe me, this has worked wonders and just getting to know someone. Even if you just say hi, you now know someone more than you did 20 seconds before. Even if you never see that person again, at least you put a smile on their face for a minute, and it's someone that you can at least be cordial with if the situation ever arises again.
I feel like that same method can totally be used at home too. When I think about moving home, it might seem like I'll be surrounded by people all the time, but it's still possible to feel a little disconnected. At home, I can make an effort to reach out more, even if it's just small things, like asking my siblings how their day or starting a random conversation with my parents about something fun. It's easy to get caught in the routine of just coexisting, but those little moments can help make me feel more connected again. Plus, being proactive about reaching out to my friends who are also back at home might help create more opportunities for interaction. I guess it's all about finding those pockets of connection, even in familiar places, just like what everyone said about just going to a coffee shop. There are people around me who might also be looking for those connections.
No, I love that. And definitely as people who have been in those positions before, we can confidently say that we're always looking for connections, even though it might be awkward or you don't want to be the first person to admit it. When have you ever been like, ugh, I can't have any more friends? Literally never. I mean, I have so many friends, sometimes I can't even remember all their names. Okay, not really. But do you guys think that moving home can bring that same sense of loneliness that we've kind of talked about? I feel like it's very possible to still feel very lonely even when being surrounded by the people that we love the most. What are things that we could do at home to try to help those feelings? Maybe being proactive in a way to ensure that you don't run into those same problems that people moving far away post-grad could feel.
I think it's easy to underestimate the emotional toll of living alone, especially after such a communal experience like college. Moving home might seem like the opposite of isolation, but I'm wondering how the dynamic changes once you're back in your childhood home. The idea of living with my family again has its pros and cons. On one hand, I'll have people around me all the time, but on the other hand, it could feel a little stifling, right? The key question here is whether living at home can feel just as lonely as living alone, especially when you're not fully independent anymore. Have any of you considered this in relation to the transition of going home after college?
Living at home for me is definitely going to be a huge adjustment, but I'm definitely very grateful to have my family close. And that was the biggest thing for me moving to college and just constantly wondering how much of my little brother's life I was going to miss or how much I would miss my grandmothers who all live 5 minutes away from me back home. Moving home can totally feel like a step backwards, but I'm definitely trying to make it feel like I'm spending time with my family that will be invaluable in the future. Losing my independence and figuring out how to balance my family responsibilities like taking my brother to practice or my grandma to the doctor. However, I think keeping a structured routine will help me, and I know that I have personal goals such as PA school that I need to be meeting. Giving me something to look forward to will definitely help. I'm also lucky enough to have many hometown friends going home for a little while as well.
I think I could counteract those feelings by being more intentional with my time. For me, staying busy will be key, making sure I have my own routine and keeping up with personal goals. I might not have the same freedom as I did in college, but I can still have a sense of control over my life. Spending time with my family can also help me focus on building those relationships in a different way, making sure I don't lose sight of those bonds. I'd also set aside time for self-care and to connect with friends who are going through similar transitions.
Perfect. I feel like those are awesome and easy things that we can all do from home. I love that idea of a mental calendar per se. I think the idea of having this mental calendar of when you want to move out or reach your next step is super important. Setting those goals increases your own productivity as well as creates something to work towards. I definitely struggle with the idea that I would, in quotes, not know when it was the right time to move out. As of right now, I'm just going to grad school, and that just screams broken. So living at home is my only option. But realistically, I would want to live there maybe 6 months to a year after I graduate with my master's. Enough time to build up a little bit of a salary, afford my own place, but also realizing that I don't want to overstay my welcome. It's definitely a weird thing to think about. Even though your parents aren't going to exactly tell you to get out, it's like, how can I read their mind of you need to go? Even though the transition can be scary with all the unknowns, I still believe that it's a step forward in the right direction. I think it's important that we choose to focus on the positives and all the fun and exciting things that come from this time too. Think coffee. If you're going home, you can go back to your favorite coffee shop growing up. And if you're going somewhere new, imagine all the new coffee shops you get to try and explore. That's just me from a coffee geek side of things. Well, thank you all for all your insights and how you're feeling about the next steps. To all of our listeners, I hope this made you feel a little bit better. We are all unsure of what is next, but at the end of the day, the move is going to happen no matter what. So just control the things that you can control. Now on to the nail-biting topic of relationships. Whether it's your friend, your boyfriend, or the person that you've been in a great space with for like 4 years, there are going to be emotions about it. So how exactly do we handle this one? Again, we have no idea. So hopefully we can figure this one out together. All right, here we are. And now I am so ready to dive into my favorite topic of the day. Relationships. Romantic or not, your relationships are going to change drastically. Once again, in Oxford, we literally all live within 1.5 miles of every single one of our best friends. If I need something, I am 5 steps away from 6 different roommates, so I can assure you that it is somewhere in the house. Mascara, hairspray, cheese, eggs, advice, you name any of it. My house has it all. And the best part, if my house doesn't have it, the house next door totally does. Just another home full of 8 of my sorority sisters. So between those 2 houses, 14 of my best friends literally sleep within 50 yards of each other. What the heck happens when I go home and the only people within 50 yards are my younger siblings? Yep, I don't know. Yes, some of my friends from high school will be back as well, but they've had a different 4 years than I have. That is 1,461 days that they were not a part of. From the big to the small, it's just not the same when you're not surrounded by your friends from college. Well, all 4 of us are in completely different situations when it comes to this, so let's just get started. Gracie, you want to explain your situation a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm actually graduating early, which is definitely exciting, but it's also a little bittersweet. It's something I've worked really hard for, and I know it's the right step for me, but at the same time, it's a little strange to be moving on while so many of my friends are still going to be here. College has been such a formative experience, and a big part of that has been the people I've surrounded myself with. We've all grown together, shared so many experiences, and built a routine that just feels normal. But now, while they're going to still be in Oxford, starting their senior year, I'll already be in a completely different environment, taking the next step towards my future. That realization is definitely hitting me more and more as graduation gets closer. It's kind of a weird feeling knowing that they'll be making new memories, going to the same spots, hanging out on the weekends, and living in that college bubble we all know so well. Well, I won't be a part of it in the same way anymore. I know that I'll still be in touch, but in reality, things will be different. And I think that's what makes this transition feel so bittersweet.
Do you think that you would ever have trouble with like FOMO as you leave college? I mean, obviously, the fear of missing out is something that we all talk about in college a lot. I feel like I would struggle so much as you said, like your friends are making new memories in the same spots that you lived in so long. So, how do you plan to deal with those emotions that might arise as you've just left, but your college friends are still spending every single weekend together in Oxford?
As for FOMO, yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little worried about it. This is something that my roommates and I have already started to talk about. We've talked about them starting a new shared album that I'm not in, so I don't get as bad of FOMO, or different group chats and stuff like that. I mean, for the past few years, my friends and I have been together all the time, whether it's going to class, sitting at the library, grabbing food, or just hanging out in the most random ways. It's hard to imagine not being part of every one of those moments anymore. I know that as much as I'll be moving forward with my life, it's still going to be tough seeing pictures and hearing about their weekend plans and realizing I won't be there with them. But at the same time, I try to remind myself why I made this decision in the first place. Graduating early isn't just about finishing college faster. It's about taking the next step toward bigger goals. I know that this is setting me up for what I want to do in the future, and I have to trust it even though it might feel like I'm missing out on some things. I'm also gaining new opportunities that align with where I want to be. Life is full of trade-offs, and while this transition might come with some FOMO, it also is one step towards the bigger picture I've been working towards. One thing that gives me a lot of comfort is knowing that just because I'm leaving, it doesn't mean my friendships are over. Staying connected might take more effort, but it's something I know I'll prioritize. I fully plan to visit Oxford when I can, whether it's for a weekend trip, a big event, or even just random visits to see my friends. And with technology today, it's not like we're completely disconnected. We can still FaceTime, text, and keep up with each other's lives, even if it looks a little different. I also think it's important to shift my mindset and see this transition as something to embrace rather than something to fear. Yes, things will change, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Every stage of life comes with new experiences, and while I'll always cherish my time at Miami and the friendships I've built here, I'm also excited for what's next. Instead of dwelling on what I might be missing, I want to focus on everything I'm gaining. New opportunities, personal growth, and a chance to take another step towards my future. Change is always a little scary, but it's also some of the best experiences happen.
Gracie, I feel like I struggle leaving enough with all of my friends graduating with me, but I feel like having some of your best friends still at school will just make visiting Oxford so much more fun. However, I do feel like your mindset is in such an amazing spot. I feel like I could even take your advice and shift my own mindset into something like that regarding my gap year. I'm going to miss out on my friends' post-grad plans and things going on when they are together post-grad living in the same city. However, I'm also making my decision to take this step forward to my future, and there is a reason I'm making this decision. I just have to remind myself of that.
No, seriously, I would definitely have to delete social media if I was in your shoes, Gracie. Literally, there is no way to handle the feelings. Isabella, do you know anyone planning to move to California, or are you pretty much just riding solo back into your home?
Yes, so luckily I won't be totally alone in California. I have a few friends from Miami who are also planning to move there too, plus my boyfriend and some high school friends, of course, and my family. So I know I'll have a good support system there. That definitely makes the transition feel a little less overwhelming, but at the same time, I know I'm going to miss my college friends a lot. So many of them are moving to Chicago or staying somewhere in the Midwest, and it's weird to think that after being used to seeing each other all the time, we'll suddenly be in completely different places. It feels like we're all being scattered in different directions, which is very exciting, but also a bit bittersweet. I know it'll take some effort to stay connected, but I really want to prioritize keeping in touch, even if it means planning visits or regular FaceTime calls.
Isabel, that's a great idea, and that sounds like so much fun. It feels like you'll be in some good company, but that doesn't make leaving what we've known for 4 years any easier. Moving home, I'll have family and friends, but it just won't be the same as it is here.
Literally talking about graduation and leaving this place makes me emotional. We can never leave. Oh my gosh. Obviously, friends are a massive part of our 20s, but so are our romantic relationships. So many people meet their romantic partner in college. You are literally thrown into a fishbowl with 20,000 options. So yeah, take that as you wish. Did not work out for me, but I heard it does for some of you guys. Well, it's your lucky day. We have every single base covered here. Single, moving home to a boyfriend, moving away from your college boyfriend. Do not worry, friends. Your answer is somewhere in here. At least I hope so. So, as the single one, I'm going to hand this one off to the rest of my ladies.
My boyfriend and I are high school sweethearts. We started dating when we were 17. I know, crazy. But over the last 4.5 years, we've been through several transitions. After graduating high school, we both went to college, luckily only about 45 minutes apart. So we saw each other pretty much every weekend. It was a pretty easy adjustment at first, but that didn't last long. After the first semester, Matthew dropped out to focus on expanding his own business. When he moved back home, about 2.5 hours away, we made a point to see each other every few weeks. It was hard at first, but we got the hang of it. Over the years, the longest we've been apart is a little over a month, and honestly, that felt way too long. So if you're in a long-distance relationship, I try not to go more than 4 weeks without seeing each other if possible. Now, I'm really looking forward to being able to see him every day again. But at the same time, I know it's going to be another big adjustment. We've gotten so used to not seeing each other all the time, so figuring out that balance will be interesting. The hardest part for us is when we're together is staying productive on our individual lives, while being there together more often will definitely make that harder. I tend to not get a lot done when I'm around him and vice versa, but I think once we get used to it, it'll become easier. I also think making time to actually go and do things together will be a challenge. I know we're both going to be having super busy lives with school, practicum, and work, and he'll be busy with work, but I think if we're intentional about it, we'll figure it out.
Definitely. For me, my relationship with my boyfriend will be another huge adjustment for me. I met my boyfriend the first semester of college and have been with him ever since. When going home for break, it's been nice being able to count down towards the days of seeing each other again and living in the same city. Now, we won't even be able to count down and we'll be over 5 hours apart working towards graduate school. I think it's going to be important for us to set dates to see each other so that can be something to look forward to like we're used to. I think this is a pretty scary part, but I think I could take some advice, like not going 4 weeks without seeing each other, from Gracie to navigate it.
When going away for college, I read several articles and things to get tips and tricks when adjusting to long distance, even though ours really wasn't that long of a distance. An article by Women's Health gave 18 tips for making long distance work, and there are definitely some good ones to take away from this. Like setting down some ground rules, planning creative dates, even if they're through a computer screen, and always having a set date on when you see each other next. I definitely recommend reading it, Kaitlyn.
That sounds so interesting, Gracie. And yes, for me, post-grad is going to be a huge transition for my relationship too, but in a really exciting way. My boyfriend is from upstate New York, but he's actually moving to San Francisco for his dream job, which is so amazing for him. We did long distance our first year of dating. We were across the world going abroad for school, which was hard, but I know we could definitely do it. It would be amazing living in the same city, but also be a big change to be potentially living together. That being said, I'm definitely hoping to land a job in San Francisco soon so I could make that move too. Like Gracie said, even when you're in the same place, it's still an adjustment. You go from having structured visits to navigating daily life together, balancing work, personal goals, and just everyday routine. At the same time, I know how different this phase is for everyone. Some people are just starting long distance, some people are ending relationships, and others are moving back somewhere totally new and figuring out things as they go. There's no perfect way to do it, but I think being intentional, whether that's making time for each other or setting long-term goals, makes a huge difference.
You guys are soldiers. I simply could not imagine doing any of those things. But it's nice to hear that you guys do have a plan because as we have talked about before, having goals and plans can make transitions way easier. On my nightly TikTok scrolls, I saw a video that said, always make sure you have something planned and something to look forward to. And I loved that. Having something to look forward to is so healthy and gives you a sense of excitement at all times. It seems little, but the little things are what are going to get you through this. Even if it's not the person that you're romantically seeing, this is an awesome thing to use with your friends too, as we're going to miss them as we move all over the country. Each topic that we discuss kind of has the same pattern, this constant change. Quite literally, every part of your life is changing at once. It's kind of crazy, it's kind of terrifying, but also exciting at the same exact time. Okay, as we wrap up today's episode of Figuring It Out, we've explored a range of experiences and dynamics that many of us have to face. Whether it's the pull of FOMO, the complexities of relationships and friendships, the experience of moving home, staying at home, or navigating a long-distance connection. What's been clear throughout our conversation is that all of these experiences are shaped by two powerful forces, communalism and individualism. In every choice, every change, and every relationship, we're constantly trying to find that balance. In our friendships and relationships, we often navigate this dance between self and the collective. Whether it's staying close to friends or family back home, or forging new connections in a different place, we're balancing the need for personal space with the need for shared experiences. It's kind of like a push and a pull of wanting to maintain our individual identities while also wanting to be a part of something, whether that's with people we care about or a larger community that we feel connected to. When it comes to long-distance relationships and friendships, this tension between communalism and individualism becomes even more pronounced. We may be physically separated, but the effort to keep those bonds alive shows how much we value those relationships. But it also challenges us to figure out how to maintain the connections without losing ourselves in the process. The individual desire for autonomy is met by the communal desire for closeness, and finding that balance is something we all continue to figure out. And then there's the experience of moving home or staying home. For some, returning to familiar places and relationships brings a sense of communal stability, but it also forces us to confront the tension between who we were in the past and who we are becoming. Home can be a safe haven, a place where communal values thrive, but it also can feel stifling when the pull for individual growth begins clashing with those familiar dynamics. Through all these experiences, we're constantly figuring out how to integrate individualism, which is our desires, our dreams, and our needs, with our communalism, which is our connections to people, our roles in communities, and our shared experiences. Trust me, it's not always easy, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight, but it's part of the journey we all take as we learn to navigate these intersections. So, as we leave this conversation today, I think about how we can embrace the balance, acknowledge our individual needs, while also staying grounded in the power of community. Because at the end of the day, it's not about one or the other. It's about finding balance between the two and realizing that figuring it out is a lifelong process. It's never just going to stop. As we end today, I just want to ask everyone to share their biggest takeaway from the episode. So there you go, guys.
My biggest takeaway from the episode is how post-grad is going to be a constant balancing act between individualism and communalism. Whether it's moving back home, starting a new job, maintaining friendships, or navigating relationships, we're all figuring it out, how to prioritize our personal growth while also staying connected to the people who matter most. Like I previously mentioned, I know moving back to California will come with both comfort and challenges. I'll have my family, boyfriend, and some friends nearby, but I'll also be adjusting to a new routine outside of college life and figuring out my career. It's reassuring to hear that no matter what situation we're all in, we're all going through similar transitions together and learning as we go.
For me, the biggest takeaway is knowing the feelings I'm having about making this change are completely normal and I'm not alone. Even though we all have different paths, we are all having similar feelings about leaving this small town and the lives we've built here. I can't wait to hear about how all of our lives unfold and where we are a few years from now. Good luck, everyone.
From listening to each other share our post-grad plans, I feel better knowing that there's no one-size-fits-all idea of a postgraduate life. Even just the four of us have completely different next steps. It's hard not to compare yourself to everyone else, but like Gracie had said, I'm working towards my future and the bigger picture. My biggest takeaway is keeping a positive mindset through this big transition will definitely be key, as well as taking advice from those closest to me, like my friends who have had to work through this FOMO or have had to deal with a long-distance relationship.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for sharing. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to Figuring It Out. We hope this episode made you think and learn as you continue navigating your own relationships, friendships, and everything in between the two. Keep listening, keep reflecting, and keep figuring it out.